In trying to understand what free will is all about, we're confronted by the Libet experiment, which shows this readiness potential beginning in the brain prior to my conscious awareness. That means that the brain is knowing what it's doing before I'm consciously aware, which undermines not only the nature of free will as we imagine it, but also the nature of consciousness itself. You disagree with that?
So it has to be the case that, neural activity generates later neural activity. So there's only neurons in our brain. There's not magical L's or anything. So I don't disagree that there's neuronal causation. That doesn't mean that there's no role for consciousness in freely willing, because there could be this other role. For example, that you have to play scenarios out internally and play options out and evaluate them and then select among them. I don't think that the Libet task is getting at that. But if you just focus on the Libet task itself, like we have, we can ask, okay, well, does this readiness potential have any causal relationship with what they call W?
W being?
Being the moment where you felt a conscious urge to move your finger. So the readiness potential builds up, you report a conscious feeling of an urge to move, and then you press a button.
Okay.
So not only do we find no temporal correlation between the onset of the readiness potential and W, the moment of the reported urge to move, we find no temporal correlation between the onset of the lateralized readiness potential and the time of the reported urge to move. Now, the readiness potential, we find, occurs for motor tasks and for non-motor tasks. So that means that the readiness potential is not necessarily linked to motor acts at all. It seems to me to be linked to preparation or expectation of some action, either a motoric action or an internal action.
So what causes the conscious urge?
Preceding neuronal activity somewhere else. My own view is that where the action is in free will is not up here in the supplementary motor area or motor planning areas or even the motor strip. Is much more forward of that in working memory areas like the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, where scenarios are played out. Now, in the kind of task where you're just moving a finger, there's not much sort of deliberation going on at all. You just say, okay, I'll just kind of randomly move my finger every so often. It's what Uri Maus calls picking as opposed to choosing. I think free will is much more closely linked to choosing, to deliberative selection among internally generated options.
So what's the implications of all this?
Well, I think one implication is negative in the sense that the field of neuroscience, in my opinion, took a wrong turn in 1980 or so, and following Libet, in a way, it's been barking up the wrong freeze, so to speak, making a bad pun. It's simply not terribly relevant to discussions of willing. What we need to do is focus on where the action is, which is in working memory and deliberative processes.